April 18th, 1945. The Philippine Sea stretched endlessly beneath the early morning haze, 240 miles east of Okinawa. Through the low-hanging clouds, a solitary Zero sliced like a wounded falcon, trailing smoke from its cowling, one wing trembling under the strain of every gust. Inside the cramped cockpit, 20-year-old Ensign Tadayoshi Koga felt the metallic tang of blood on his tongue and the briny sting of sea air on his lips. The engine coughed, a harsh, stuttering rhythm matching the drum of his heartbeat. He could not yet know the miracle that awaited him. In fewer than 4 minutes, he would set down on the deck of an American aircraft carrier, alive. Not a single gun would fire. Not a soul on that ship, not even Koga himself, could fully comprehend what was happening. The scene was already scripted in the sky. A Japanese pilot desperately fleeing death, and a U.S. carrier crew bracing for a kamikaze attack, converging in a landing so improbable it would become legend. But at this moment, Koga had only one concern keeping his faltering Zero airborne long enough to find somewhere, anywhere, to land. His mission had started hours earlier on Formosa, a routine patrol over Okinawa's approaches. Yet since America's inexorable advance through the Pacific, routine had become a cruel joke. Each sortie was a gamble with death, and that morning, fate had dealt him a cruel hand. Dear friends, if this video has reached you, it's not by chance. Right now, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. Write a number from 1 to 5 in the comments. I will personally respond to the first 50 comments, and make sure to watch the video until the end. Hellcats emerged from the sun, diving with lethal precision. Koga's wingman vanished in a flash of fire and smoke. Bullets tore into his fuselage. His engine screamed, protesting the punishment, and he dove into the clouds to shake his pursuers. But clarity came with horror. He was lost. Fuel dwindling, engine faltering, radio dead. No island in sight. The Zero shuddered again. Then, far below, Koga glimpsed salvation, or its twin, destruction. A massive shape floated on the water, steel and flat, wider than anything he had imagined. An aircraft carrier. His heart leapt and sank. A brief, desperate hope that it might be Japanese flickered, only to be extinguished by the unmistakable lines of American planes on the deck, their shapes bulky and foreign. A U.S. Navy carrier group, right beneath him. The math of war offered no mercy. Turn away, and he would crash into the sea within minutes. Stay, and they would shoot him out of the sky. Koga banked, aligning the Zero with the carrier's deck. On the USS Bogue, the air crews were preparing for routine recoveries when a lookout's voice rang out from the island. Incoming aircraft, Zero, low, damaged! Alarms blared. Sailors froze. Gunners swung barrels in panic. But confusion rippled through the deck. The Zero was not diving, not accelerating, not armed. Its landing gear was down. It was trying to land. A murmur swept through the crew as officers rushed into position. Commander Harold Dixon, Air Operations Chief, gripped binoculars, disbelief etched on his face. What in God's name? A kamikaze would never lower its gear. A strafing fighter wouldn't approach like this. A reconnaissance plane would not dare this method. "Hold fire! Hold fire! Hold fire!" Dixon barked, and in those precious seconds, Koga's life hung by a thread. The deck rose toward him, and the LSO landing signal officer stood frozen, paddles in hand. Guide a Zero onto a carrier? Impossible. Yet the Japanese fighter descended through turbulent gusts, rising off the bow. Koga's hands clenched the stick. His eyes never left the deck. 50 feet, 30, 20. The Zero wobbled, smoke spitting from the cowling. The arresting wires glinted like silver threads. He exhaled, easing the throttle. And then, the engine died. Nothing. Silence in the roar of the wind. The nose dipped. The deck rushed up. Sailors flinched. "Brace!" someone shouted. The Zero slammed onto the wooden deck with a metallic crack, bouncing once, skidding sideways, wheels shrieking, tailhook catching the fourth wire, jerking the aircraft violently to a halt. Silence. A single heartbeat suspended in disbelief. Ensign Tadayoshi Koga sat trembling, alive. Sailors stared, jaws slack, trying to process the impossible. A Japanese pilot had just landed on an American carrier. Slowly, Koga raised his hands. Rifles lifted, but no shots rang out. No shouting. Just a shared astonishment. The fragile pause where enemies became witnesses to the surreal. Commander Dixon stepped forward, voice steady, later remembered in countless memoirs. "Secure the pilot. He's ours." Koga swallowed hard. The war in the air, at least for him, was over. The deck crew approached cautiously, weapons raised but fingers off triggers. None wanted to be first. After all, no American had ever taken a Japanese pilot straight from the sky, from a plane still warm, onto their carrier deck. The cockpit canopy creaked. Koga pushed it open, hands still raised, trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion. Oil smeared his cheek. A cut bled above his eyebrow. Wind whipped across his face, drying sweat and fear alike. A young sailor, barely older than him, stared wide-eyed. Jesus, he's just a kid. Koga understood the word. Bits of English learned in school whispered through his mind. He had been trained to resist to the last breath, to take his life before surrender. But the truth pressed upon him. Any sudden move now, and he would die instantly. Commander Dixon approached, boots thudding against the deck. He studied the young pilot for several seconds, then spoke, calm but firm. "You will be treated fairly. Don't make any sudden moves. Understood?" Koga hesitated, then slowly nodded. Two sailors moved in, gently helping him from the cockpit. His legs gave way beneath him. He had not realized how utterly spent he was. And then, almost instinctively, the sailors caught him. That fleeting moment, the kind that passes in the blink of an eye, stripped away all the fear and ideology that had defined him. Imagine it. A pilot once feared across the Pacific, trained to hunt and destroy, now standing wounded, dehydrated, utterly terrified, among the very people he had been taught to see as enemies. For Koga, it was as if the world had shifted on its axis. They guided him across the deck toward the heart of the carrier. His eyes darted like a hawk's, taking in every detail. The Grumman Wildcats and Avenger bombers sat in perfect formations, gleaming under the sun. Crewmen in crisp white vests hustled about dragging hoses, rolling wheel chocks, steering aircraft with the precision of a practiced orchestra. Koga couldn't help himself. He was mesmerized. This was not the chaotic, resource-starved airfields of Japan. No, this was a floating metropolis, immaculate and ruthlessly efficient. No wonder America never ran out of planes. As he was led below deck, the flight crews swarmed around the Zero. Fingers traced its skin, marveling at how thin the metal felt, more like a soda can than armor. Others leaned into the cockpit, whispering to each other in disbelief. No armor plating, the fuel lines, exposed, everything so light, one mechanic whistled. "This thing's a death trap with wings." But for the U.S. Navy, for the intelligence officers circling it like vultures, the Zero was no trap. It was a prize of fully intact, combat-flown A6M-0, the very aircraft that had haunted their nightmares since Pearl Harbor. The fighter that had dominated the early war skies now sat quietly on their deck, captured without a single shot fired. And the officers descended immediately, eager to dissect every secret it held. Below deck, Koga was taken to a narrow compartment, flanked by two MPs. He perched on a metal bench, hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles ached. He expected brutality, interrogation, punishment. After all, Japan had drilled into him that Americans were monsters. But instead, a medic stepped forward. "Hold still," the medic said gently, dabbing at the cut on Koga's brow with antiseptic. Koga flinched at the sting, bracing for a strike, but none came. The medic worked calmly, professionally, finishing, and then offering a small cup of water. Suspicion made Koga hesitate, but the medic simply nodded. "Go ahead." The water was cold, pure, almost miraculous. Better than anything he had tasted in months. The medic smiled faintly. "You'll be all right." And then he was gone. Koga exhaled, a slow release of tension. All his life, every speech, every pamphlet, every officer had screamed, "Americans are monsters." Yet here was proof to the contrary. The first American he encountered had treated him like a human being. The realization rattled him far more than the crash itself. News of the Zero's capture spread through the carrier like wildfire. Officers swarmed the deck. Camera crews clicked incessantly. Chief Engineer Addison practically crawled under the fuselage, peering at the engine mounts. "Look at the weight savings," he murmured. They sacrificed protection for maneuverability. Commander Dixon, standing nearby, shook his head. "Can we fly her again?" Addison's grin widened. "Oh, we're damn sure going to try." Meanwhile, Captain Giles, the commanding officer, exchanged a look with his air intelligence officer. "This goes straight to Washington," he said. "We'll need a transport ready the moment we reach port." A captured Zero meant testing, simulations, new tactics, an intelligence windfall that could save hundreds, perhaps thousands, of American lives. All because one young Japanese pilot misjudged his heading and trusted the wrong patch of ocean. Below deck, Koga felt the vibrations of the flight deck above aircraft taking off, landing, the hum of a living, breathing war machine he had never imagined from the inside. He pictured his Zero being prodded, examined, dissected. He thought of his commanders, his family. Would they even know he survived? Or would Japan simply erase him from memory, declare him dead and disgraced? He bowed his head. Mission failed, homeland betrayed, his aircraft, the pride of Japan in enemy hands. The shame was suffocating, yet he was alive. And in war, survival itself was a quiet rebellion. On deck, Commander Dixon shook his head beside the Zero. "Gentlemen," he murmured, "this may be the most valuable landing of the entire war." The deck crew nodded in silent agreement. Night fell over the USS Bogue like a heavy velvet curtain. Below, Koga sat on the edge of his bunk, fingers interlocked until they throbbed. The carrier vibrated above him, alive with engines, shifting weight and purpose. Captured, alive, dishonored. A metallic click signaled the door opening. Two Marines stepped in firm, yet not threatening. "Pilot," one said, "you're needed topside." Koga rose, legs stiff, shoulders weighted with fear and shame. He braced for interrogation, perhaps punishment. Yet the Marines led him with calm efficiency through the corridors, alive with the energy of a carrier. Voices shouting orders, machinery humming, sailors moving with intent. It was a world apart from the crumbling, fuel-starved Japanese airfields he had known. Finally, he entered a small briefing room. Commander Dixon, Captain Giles, and a Japanese-speaking officer waited, their posture quiet and respectful. "Ensign Koga," the translator began softly, "we have questions, not about Japanese secrets, only about your condition and this morning's events." Koga's eyes remained downcast, his voice low and strained. "I have failed. Capture brings shame." Dixon exhaled slowly. "Son," he said gently, "you chose to live. That is not shame. That is survival." Koga looked up, startled. No mockery, no anger, just Humanity? Captain Giles leaned forward. You will be treated fairly. Fed, protected, and when the war ends, you go home. The word twisted like a blade in Koga's mind. Home. Would Japan even welcome him back, or would they erase his name entirely? He gave no answer. The questioning was brief, mundane almost. No threats, no demands. When finished, he was escorted back to his compartment, unbound, unhurt, yet more confused than ever. By morning, the flight deck was alive with a different kind of frenzy. Engineers swarmed the Zero. Addison wiped his hands on a rag. All right, boys. Today we find out what makes this thing dance. Panels came off, photos were snapped, every rivet, cable, and inch of Japanese engineering cataloged. One crewman tapped a wing. Feels like paper. Another whistled at the carburetor. That's why they climb so damn fast. Addison grinned, eyes alight with anticipation. We're going to crack this thing open like a Christmas present, Addison said, eyes sparkling with a mix of mischief and awe. But this wasn't a toy. The Zero had transformed into a treasure trove of intelligence, each rivet and cable a potential key to victory. A lieutenant leaned toward Commander Dixon, voice low and urgent. Sir, this changes everything. Dixon nodded, though in truth, it already had. Below deck, Koga felt the vibrations of every movement above him, the tap of boots, the clang of tools, the metallic echo of panels shifting. His plane was being dismantled, examined, understood, piece by piece, bolt by bolt, secret by secret. Duty whispered that he should feel shame, but beneath it, a different rhythm pulsed in his chest. He was still alive. The morning sun rose over the Philippine Sea, cutting a bright, sharp swath across the deck. To any casual observer, it was a normal day at sea. But aboard the Bogue, every sailor knew otherwise. The captured Zero had become the ship's crown jewel. Everyone wanted to glimpse it, photograph it, whisper about the secrets the engineers were uncovering. Alone in his compartment, Koga pressed his ear against the faint hum of activity above. He pictured the Zero stripped bare, its panels laid out like discarded armor, the engineers hunched over its frame, analyzing, discussing. Its light fuselage, its astonishing climb rate, its hidden vulnerabilities, every detail was being catalogued. His palm pressed against the cold bulkhead. The metal felt like a tombstone, marking the end of a mission, a world, and a way of life. The door creaked open. This time, only the Japanese-speaking officer who had translated for Captain Giles stepped inside. Ensign Koga, he said politely. May I sit? Koga inclined his head. The officer settled onto the bunk beside him. I know this must feel confusing, he began gently. You were taught that we are cruel, that surrender is worse than death. Koga looked down. The truth in those words pricked at him uncomfortably. But yesterday, the officer continued, you saw something different. Koga swallowed. I do not understand your kindness, he admitted. It isn't kindness, the officer said softly. It's humanity. War or not, you are a pilot. You are a man. And men deserve dignity. Koga's eyes stung. He blinked rapidly, surprised at his own vulnerability. The translator rested his hands lightly on his knees. I will not try to change your beliefs, he said, but understand this. You are not dishonored. You are alive. And one day, you will return home. Koga's voice trembled, almost inaudible. What if home no longer wants me? For the first time, he saw a flicker of something unexpected in the eyes of an enemy. Sympathy. Then, the officer said quietly, you build a new one. Meanwhile, on the flight deck, Dixon and Addison watched as the Zero was carefully lowered into the hangar bay. Soon, it would be shipped to the United States for thorough testing. Before any American pilot faced another Zero in combat, They would already know its every flaw, every vulnerability, every limit. Addison exhaled, a mix of reverence and awe in his voice. "Sir, this single airplane may save hundreds of lives." Dixon nodded slowly, gazing out at the endless blue horizon. And it all came from the courage of a kid who just tried to survive. He shook his head. War had a way of twisting fate in ways no one could foresee. That afternoon, Koga was moved to quarters reserved for long-term prisoners. The room was larger, more comfortable. A real bed, a small desk, a narrow window letting in warm sunlight. On the table lay a tray of food. Americans fed their prisoners well, a reality Koga had not anticipated. He sat slowly, staring at the meal. Rice, chicken, bread, water. At first, he ate mechanically, almost as if performing a duty. But hunger soon overcame restraint. Each bite untangled the tight knot inside him, just a little. Alive. Safe. Treated not as a shameful failure, but as a human being. He set down his fork and looked at the photograph taped to the wall across from him. The 0, captured, gleaming on the deck before it had been lowered away. His aircraft was gone. His mission ended. His fate, for better or worse, now belonged to history. And yet, Tadayoshi Koga. The young man caught in a war too vast to fully comprehend, was still breathing. That single, stubborn breath had already shifted the currents of the Pacific War in ways he would never know.